And one thing I kind of want to clear up or make sure you understand the difference between deficit and debt. Deficit is when your expenditures exceed your revenues. Okay, so the money going out exceeds the money that is coming in. And then the debt is, just think of it as accumulated deficits. Okay, when the government has a deficit, they have to go borrow money from a list of those places that I already said. And when they have deficits, okay, those deficits accumulate, and therefore you have national debt. Okay. By 2013, national debt's about $17.5 trillion. So doing something to get down the debt would be a good job, because that could handcuff us in the future for sure. Okay, let's look at the budgetary process, and let's mostly look at the players that we're talking about here. And there are a lot of players in this process. First of all, you have the president. The president, along with the Office of Management and Budget, they finalize a budget, and they send it to Congress, and they try to persuade Congress to, follow the recommendations, the president's recommendations. But that's not the only people that are involved. Interest groups, okay, lobbyists are part of it. Okay, they want their interest group, whether it be big oil, alcohol, tobacco, gun lobby, whatever. They want them, making sure their interests are heard. Okay. Also, the cabinet, Department of Agriculture, Department of Interior, they want to, make sure that their department is getting money for the things that they need to do. So there's the cabinet members, the agencies. Of course, there's the Office of Management and Budget. There's the tax committees in Congress, the House Ways and Means Committee, in the House, and the Senate Finance Committee. They obviously the government can't spend money that it doesn't have, and they also write the tax codes. So those tax committees, the budget committees, and the Congressional Budget Office, which advises Congress on the consequences of its budget. Okay. Also makes forecasts, much like the Office of Management and Budget for the President. What else here? Authorization committees. Okay. Those committees that are on Congress, not the cabinet members like agriculture and stuff, but there are agriculture and veteran affairs committees on Congress, making sure their budget is there, and possibly getting more money to use. Okay. Then there's also this one agency called the Government Accountability Office. Okay. After the budget is passed, the GAO, we call it, works as Congress' eyes and ears. Okay. It kind of monitors what agencies are doing with their budgets and stuff. Okay, so the president's budget, let's look at that. The president was required to propose a budget and give to Congress. That has been reorganized over the years, and the last time President Nixon in 1970 renamed the Bureau of the Budget to the Office of Management and Budget, which we have now. The director is appointed by the president, okay, and it requires Senate approval, okay, but he supervises, the preparation of the federal budget and advises the president on the budget, because the president can't know everything and can't come up with his own budget just because of his workload. So he has the Office of Management and Budget to help him. Obviously, it takes a long time to prepare the budget. By October, October 1st is the start of the fiscal year, they call it in the federal government. But there are certain guidelines, like the president has to submit his budget by the first Monday in February, and other guidelines for Congress and what they do with the budget. Okay, so really the OMB and the president come up with the budget. They send it to Congress, okay, before the deadline, and then really it's up to Congress about the budget, and they, the CBO, or the Congressional Budget Office, looks at it. The different committees, conference committees and stuff, look at it, but they have to authorize all appropriations, so all money that they're giving out. So they are really looking out for it, because they do have power of the purse, and they spend a lot of money. I'm not going to go into like the whole what Congress does with it, but a lot of times the president gives a budget, and Congress takes a little bit of this and that out. The president still has a lot of say in the budget. I mean, even if they take 10% of the president's budget, they clip it, do whatever with it. The president still gets like 90% of his budget that he wanted out there. So it's a lot of power for both the president and Congress. Let's see. Congress takes that budget and appropriates, figures out how much money they're going to spend, appropriates the money. Okay, they pass an authorization bill. Okay, that establishes or changes the government program. Okay, those specify the program's goals, discretionary programs, set the maximum amount they could spend. For entitlement programs, they sets and changes eligibility standards, like age in Social Security or something like that. They also pass additional measures like appropriations bills to fund programs. There's this whole timetable that usually is hardly ever met. Is kind of interesting. Usually, a lot of times they'll give out continuing resolutions, which are really laws that allow agencies to spend at the previous year's level, at their previous budget level. Sometimes those, are used because they cannot get a budget, cannot make the deadline for the budget. So, let's see. Let's look at deficits and timetables for deficits. Over the years, the deficit hasn't been that bad, federal deficits. The deficits got a little higher. In the 70s, they were pretty low, and then the oil embargo, 1974, I believe, which raised energy prices, made the deficit higher. It stayed around, $75 billion, sorry. And then Ronald Reagan got into office, and it went up, mostly probably because of more defense spending and such. It went down a little bit in the late 80s and went back up again in the 90s, and that's when we had a savings and loan scandal, and so we bailed them out, so it actually increased the deficit to about $300 billion. And then when Clinton was in office in the early 90s, mid 90s, it actually was balanced for a couple years. So that was interesting. The deficit was balanced, actually ran a surplus in the fiscal year 1998. Except by 2002, it started going up again because of a cut in income taxes. And then the war in Iraq began, and then it went down a little bit during the last few years of Bush's term, and then went right up again in the last year or so of Bush's term, 2-3 years. And then the financial crisis began. And then, we had a very, very large deficit, which was, because of the Great Recession, they call it. Hopefully that deficit is going to go down, and there are estimates that it will go down billions of dollars, which is good. And it'd be better if they could, balance the budget, but get some of that debt paid off. Okay, that's it for the budget. I know it was really interesting. Everyone loves talking about budget, but we will see you soon.